Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about the indictment of Hunter Biden from earlier today. Usually in these YouTubes, my first effort is to try to explain what could be legal, intricate maneuvers. Not this time. I just got to say and put it out there. I think this stinks. I think it's really an abuse of prosecutorial power, and let me explain why. Okay, so we have to go back. 2018, Biden is in the depth of crack cocaine use. He's screwing up left and right, not paying his taxes, etc. And at one point, for reasons that are a little bit unclear, maybe it has something to do with his brother who's recently died. He goes to get a gun. And he says on the form for getting the gun, as he has to, that he's not, or he certifies certain things by signing. And one of them is he's not addicted to drugs and using certain drugs. That was a lie. He was at the time using crack cocaine, which was getting him in all kinds of trouble because that's the crime. Then he's got the gun for all of 11 days. His girlfriend throws it out, and that's the end of the story. Until now, 5 years later, when a U.S. attorney who was appointed by Trump, but the Department of Justice let hang around after. It's unusual, and they clearly did it because he was investigating Hunter Biden. So David Weiss has been investigating Biden for 5 years. And they worked out finally a plea agreement on the charges, and that required Biden to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges, times when in the throes of addiction he wasn't paying his taxes. He later did pay them, but he didn't pay them at the time, and that's right. And then this gun charge. And on this gun charge, what they worked out was not so unusual for the DOJ, but it's a sign of going easy. It's called a diversion agreement, and it's basically if you kind of visit probation, keep your nose clean, don't have a gun, don't use drugs for a couple years, we'll file this charge at first, but it'll kind of hang out there, and at the end of 2 years, it will go away. That was the deal. So they go to court to present this deal, and they've done it kind of, they mess up basically by putting too much about the gun deal in the actual plea agreement with the taxes, because the judge says, understandably, well, it looks as if I'm kind of supposed to certify that this charge stays or goes away. That's what the executive branch does. That's not what judges do. This looks funky to me. And it was a total legitimate point on her part. She was being right. It was just sloppy lawyering. At that point in the hearing, the plea agreement comes undone. Biden enters a plea of not guilty because it's now there's no plea on the table. Since they worked out the agreement, 2 things have happened. That it came undone for reasons having nothing to do with Biden, and just a hue and cry from Republicans on the Hill about what a sweetheart deal Hunter Biden got. I wrote about that at the time, explaining why. No, I think it's a rational, decent deal for the DOJ. They could lose these cases, but just a lot of screaming and all kinds of accusations that Biden was giving preferential treatment. Hunter Biden was, although it's interesting because every time they said it, they basically asserted that the president was doing it personally. As you may have seen, they're looking to impeach Joe Biden now. They got nothing. I mean, really, literally nothing, but they're somehow trying to do an investigation to tie it to things that Hunter Biden did in 2014. Hunter Biden is a pawn in their game with an unfortunate for him last name that they can use to try to vilify and demean Biden for electoral reasons. We know, in fact, that Trump called up his buddies in the House and said, let's impeach Biden. So then we've got a kind of, false parallel. Yeah, 4 crimes and fomenting a coup, but he's been impeached too, or that's the idea. Okay, really, that seems to be all that's happened. The plea agreement coming undone and the screaming on the Hill, which it shouldn't take much explaining, is zero reason to indict someone. Weiss, though, goes to Merrick Garland and gets authority as a special counsel, which just increases his independence. In theory, he's supposed to be subject to DOJ policies and the like. We know in practice, perhaps to the chagrin of the White House, that Merrick Garland and the DOJ are totally arm's length and letting Weiss do what he wants. So he indicts Biden. Now, the kind of big point here, I've looked hard. I continue to look, and I can't find a parallel case where they bring charges for lying on a form unless the defendant has then used the gun that they shouldn't have gotten and done another crime with it. I've heard maybe there's a case or two where there was another special reason. They had independent evidence that the defendant was a really bad dude and they wanted to incarcerate him, and there was that reason. But basically that a guy just lied on the form, which Biden did, seems to be a charge that DOJ brings never. And it happens here because Weiss is operating free from the normal DOJ prosecutorial discretion, which is designed so that similarly situated defendants get treated alike. And it looks to me here that this defendant got treated very unalike, and it's really because of his last name. And that's why I say I think it stinks. All right, since it stinks, can he not get the case thrown out? And the short answer is no, not on that basis. People have said a couple things about what Biden's aggressive and excellent lawyer, Abby Lowell, could try to argue, and he will. One would be this is vindictive prosecution. But vindictive prosecution technically is when someone is prosecuted in retaliation for the exercise of their constitutional rights. Not exactly what happened here. The plea just, completely falls apart, and Hunter then, is you're sort of left at square one. But there's not a very good case that he was indicted because he pleaded not guilty. The other thing that's been raised is, ironically, by Democrats, is some of the case law in the wake of the Supreme Court's decision in the Heller case and the Brune case, that is to say, case law involving the Second Amendment, might make it suspect that you could criminalize the possession of a gun by someone who's a drug addict. That might be, even though you're a drug addict, a right that you still enjoy. Crazy if you ask me, but that the courts might be going that way. But I don't think it's that significant here because for this one act, the feds, as they're wont to do, made three crimes. One, a written statement where he wrote, "I didn't do this." The other, an overall certification on the form. Third, possession of a gun by someone who is using drugs. That third count potentially could be subject to a constitutional challenge. But I just don't see the world in which even a robust expansion of Second Amendment rights permits people to lie on these forms. So I don't really see that as having much purchase. There'll be other things that Abby Lowell will try to say, we had a deal and it's enforceable, and maybe go on the warpath. Interestingly, earlier this week, they actually sued a civil suit against one of the Hunter Biden and Joseph Biden haters out there for violating Hunter's rights under the Computer Act. It looks like somebody was, mucking around and trying to hack things illegally. Anyway, that's the allegation. So they're pushing back hard, and they will push back hard against these charges. But to me, DOJ decides when to bring charges, and the fact that they basically never bring them in analogous situations is just not a reason. It's a reason DOJ shouldn't have brought them. It's a reason if you go to the DOJ and says don't bring them, they should listen. But it's not a reason that a court will dismiss a lawsuit. So I think there's a distinct prospect. Hunter Biden has to go to trial, of course, in the middle of the election season. Gives a kind of talking point of, oh yeah, Trump's on trial for a crime, but look, so is Hunter Biden, everybody's corrupt, etc. That itself is very unfair. But what's really unfair is this guy is facing charges and maybe even loss of liberty. Maybe, I don't think it would be that long, but a possible stint in jail for really the crime of being the son of the president, or so it seems to me. We'll see how it plays out. As I say, there'll be some forceful charges, but I think if Weiss is insistent on bringing the case will be brought, and that's what we're looking at in a few months. So stay tuned if any of his for sure aggressive pretrial motions gets any traction with courts, who may well understand what's really going on, but that doesn't mean they'll have the power to dismiss it. So we'll see whether in fact a trial ensues in several months from now. That is the middle of the presidential campaign. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.